Alright, long time no see. This is my Dimir Reanimator deck. I got pretty close to winning an RCQ. I'll talk about that later, but I ended up getting second place. Some spoilers, I guess. So, which is not bad for a deck like this. So if you want to play Reanimator and you don't want to play Esper, I don't know, this could be an option for you, I guess. But let's go ahead and get right into the profile here. So I'm playing this card called Essence Flux. It's kind of like Ephemerate, but worse. Obviously, one of the upsides of playing Esper, which is what a lot of people play for Reanimator, is having Ephemerates. So this, not quite as good, but still like annoying. So when I was playing 4 of these, like when your opponent targets your Archon or whatever, you just flicker it, and then they're like, well, now I gotta deal with another trigger of it, and it's also still alive. So pretty underrated card, but you know, obviously Ephemerate's a little bit better. Playing our interaction here. Thoughtseize, 4 of those. I cut one of the Essence Flux out for a land, I think. One of the problems I was having was just like not getting enough mana early, and that was kind of a thing that I kept seeing. I did make some changes when I got home, so I'll be kind of talking about those as I go along. But Thoughtseize, good on offense, good on defense. So like if you have an Archon in your hand and a Persist, turn 1 you can actually Thoughtseize yourself. I mean, assuming like your opponents, we'll talk about this later, but assuming that they're not playing, you know, some sort of exile effect, like, oh, what is it called? I've already forgot the name of it, but, you know, the one where you pay a life and you exile a card from the graveyard. I mean, I am forgetting what it is, but that card's really annoying. Nil plays it. So if they have some sort of exile effect, then don't do this. But obviously, so you target yourself, you discard the Archon, and then on your next turn, you persist the Archon. So that's one of the things you can do with this if you have Archon in your hand. But most of the time, you're going to be Thoughtseizing your opponent because you don't want to run into counter spells or like removal. So let's go on more interaction here. Push is really good in this deck because we have fetch lands, so, and also we have you know, Essence Flux, so we can bounce our Archon and then get the Revolt trigger as well that way. So pretty good. Let's go on to For Considered. Now, before you click off the video, I know a lot of you are going to be thinking like, are you playing Preordain? And the reason why is because this is an instant, and there's times where I want to hold up counter magic. So I pass it to my opponent, see what they do. If they play a threat, counter it obviously, and if they don't, then I'll consider. Because like if you play Preordain, you know, your opponent like can start building a board, you know, on turn 1 or turn 2 or whatever. So and I feel like, you know, the Surveil sometimes I'll hit an Archon or I'll hit something I just don't want, and I'll bin it and then draw. But I felt like it kind of thins the deck out a little bit more than Preordain, so that's why I'm running it. We have 4 Counterspell, obviously. A really good card. This was something I added in recently, like after, because one of the things of the deck is like I said, like having an Archon in your hand, and you know, you can't really, like, you just don't want the card in your hand, right? You want it in the grave. So I put this in, I'm gonna see how it plays. It's just another way to, you know, discard Archon and also get some removal out of it. Then we have the best card on the deck, probably. Persist, obviously. Want to run 4 of those. It's non-negotiable. And then we're playing 4 unmarked graves. So one of the reasons why I'm not playing the Esper Gorios version is because, well, there's 2 reasons. One is that it's really expensive because you have to get your playset of Atraxa, your playset of Goryo's Vengeance, and then, you know, Crystal Brand if you want to play him. And then there's other cards, but like that's just that alone's over probably $200, I think. Well, maybe not quite. Maybe it's like $150. But still, that's a lot of money. And then first thing is that those decks, you know, the problem with them is that they don't have a way to like, I mean, I guess you have a Buried Alive, but you know, that's 3 mana, so you know, this is 2 mana. But basically one of the problems with that deck is like, you'll have, you know, they do a lot of looting effects to get their big creatures in the grave, whereas with this deck, you know, you just play Unmarked Grave, and then that immediately entombs an Archon for you. So I felt like this is more consistent, but I could be wrong. I haven't played the Esper version of this, so I don't know, but this card's really good. I would say the problem is like, obviously sometimes I'll get this in my hand and like there's already Archon in the grave, and that's kind of annoying because you only really need like 1 or 2 of them in the grave. So I am thinking about cutting one of these, but at the same time I don't want to ruin like the consistency, so this is kind of where I'm at on that one. Good card, but don't need it all the time. Tainted Indulgence, obviously another way to discard the Archon. Some people play, what's that card called? It's a blue spell. When you attack, you draw 2. But if you don't attack, you draw 2, discard 1. Oh man, I'm blanking on all the names right now, but some people play that one, and I don't really like it that much. I think this one's a little bit better for this deck because it's an instant, so you can end your opponent's turn, pitch an Archon, and then draw 2. We have Emperor Bones. This card is really dumb. I don't think it's necessarily like broken per se, but it's definitely really good. Playing a playset of these right now, the card's just really dumb. You can basically, if you don't know what this does, it is a new card, but it's really good. So at the beginning combat on your turn, exile up to 1 target creature from a graveyard. Then as adapt 2 for 2 mana basically. And then whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on him, put a creature card exiled with him onto the battlefield under your control with a finality counter on it. Keep that in mind. It gains haste, and then you sack at the beginning of the next end step. So there's a combo with this deck that's really annoying. So what you do is get this out beginning of your turn. Archon is in your grave, let's just say, or combat. Exile it, and then you adapt it. So it comes into play, it triggers, and then this is 4/4 now. And then you swing both of these. So then your opponent takes another 3, and then 10 on top of that. More than likely, they're not going to have a creature to block after this because Archon triggers twice. And then what you do, if your opponent's not dead after taking, what is that, 16 damage, you then play this. Because then now, during your second main phase, because it has a finality counter on it, right? So it's gonna die. You don't want that to happen. You flicker it, and then it comes back, and then it triggers again. So 9 times out of 10, if you get this combo, your opponent's just gonna die, because that's 16 damage just with this. So obviously that's in like a perfect world where your opponent like doesn't have some sort of interaction. In my experience, A few decks did, so that was annoying. But overall, it's lethal, and if they're not dead with this, you're going up in so much value with gaining the life and drawing cards. They're also discarding and sacking all their creatures, so I mean, that's going to be putting them behind. So, yeah, really interesting combo there. And then obviously, for those, I'm actually only playing 3 Archons because I was playing 4 in the tournament, but the problem was sometimes I would draw one, and that's not good. You do not want to draw him. You want him in the grave, obviously. So you don't want to top deck this like ever, because it's just a dead card. So I would suggest 3 if you're thinking about building a Dimir Reanimator deck. One other thing is some people are playing the new frog that's out, Psycho Frog. It is a good card, but I didn't feel like dropping $40 into this deck, another 40 into it, so I just kind of went with what I got here and took second place. So, you know, it is what it is. We got Polluted Delta, only 3 because that's all I have right now. You can play 4 if you want. Drowned Catacomb, it's not very good, but you know, it's whatever. 3 Dark Slick Shores, 4 Watery Graves, and 4 Underground Rivers, and then 4 Basic Lands. So that's the lands. With Pain lands, we don't really care about paying life because, you know, Archon gets us more life anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Alright, sideboard time. I think some of you are going to be kind of shocked by this, but you know, there's a couple reasons why I'm playing what I'm playing. So, Harbinger of the Seas, only playing 1 because I only have 1 right now. Every time I side this in, I never draw it, and you know, I mean, I guess it's expected, right? You're only playing 1, but out of like the 4 or 5 times I sided it in, I never drew it, so, or never got around to getting it, so that was annoying. Toxic Deluge is really good. I don't know why I'm putting that there. Toxic Deluge is really good. With big, like, when a lot of creature decks, so kind of keep them in check. Yeah, Legion's End. Again, another kind of pseudo board wipe. Really good against tokens. Mainly here for Boros Energy, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Spell Pierces for more early game interaction stuff. Test of Talents is really, really good. It's like basically just like when your opponent casts like a instant sorcery card, you negate it and then you exile all cards with the same name from their deck, I believe, from their hand and library and graveyard. So I was thinking the reason why this is in here because I thought I was gonna play against decks like mirror matches, and I also thought I was gonna play against creativity, but I never got around to playing it because you play this against creativity and they just lose because they have other good cards in their deck, but like you counter their creativity and I mean they can't get their Archons out, so unless they hard cast it, but that's kind of embarrassing. 3 Subtlety. It's just a really good sideboard card for like heavy creature spells, so or creature decks, so really good. Playing 3 Murktide, which I'm sure some of you might be shocked, some of you might not be, but the problem with this deck is like so game 1 usually goes really well. Sometimes it doesn't. It depends, but it goes well because your opponent doesn't know what you're playing, right? So they're not really as prepared for it when you start reanimating stuff. But when it goes to game 2, your opponent's going to be ready for your shenanigans, right? So in an effort to kind of get around that, I put these in the sideboard because, you know, knowing that they're gonna probably exile my Archons from the grave. Extraction, that's what it's called, surgical extraction. If they extract your Archon, you lose. Like, there's really nothing you can do. You can play Emperor Bones, maybe try to get something from their grave, but you're probably gonna lose. So I put this in because, you know, if they do have exile effects from my graveyard, I'm like, well, you know, I'm gonna go ahead and exile my graveyard first, so I can drop this 8/8 Murktide, and now you have to deal with this instead of my Archon. And I actually won quite a few games from doing that. So yeah, that is the deck. And you know, that's about all I have to say on that. I can kind of debrief on all the matchups I had. Surprisingly, at this RCQ, I thought I was going to play against like a lot of Boros energy decks because the data shows that there's a lot of them. So let's find. So that's why I put Legion's End and Toxic Deluge in the deck. Surprisingly, there was only one deck that was running Boros there, which was kind of shocking. So my first matchup went kind of horrible. I played against a mill deck, and which I was shocked because I'm like, I didn't even know people were still playing mill, but I guess they are. And don't get me wrong, it is a good deck, but like, I was not expecting it because, you know, you watch all these videos on like what people are playing nowadays and like the top 5 decks, and I was not expecting mill at all. But it turns out there was 2 people playing mill there, and I ended up playing against both of them. Now you would think that my first match, you know, went pretty well, but it actually didn't. The first guy I played against didn't go so well. What happened was I milled an Archon with his, well, when I figured out what he was playing, I was like, I didn't really care that he was milling my deck because I'm like, well, I want Archon in the grave anyway, so he's just kind of helping me. But then he extracted Archon, and I lost the game basically on the spot. Then I sideboarded my the cards I needed, and that game also didn't go very well. I ended up milling like my entire deck on like turn 4, so yeah, that was not fun at all. So it started off 0-1. The next person I played against was a someone. He was playing like a Boros. It wasn't really like energy per se. It was just a Boros like burn deck, and I ended up beating him 2-0. Just kind of like waited for him to kind of play whatever, and then I just killed off his creatures when, you know, after he pumped them up. So no, so I went into this like thinking like, you know, I wasn't really gonna win a whole lot with this deck because you know, like I kind of thought like this deck fell off, so I was kind of shocked that I actually won that one, because this deck does struggle against like fast decks like that, but got the W. Then I played against another mill deck right after that, so that was really fun. I ended up beating this one, that opponent. They milled my Archons, and then I persisted and then did all my shenanigans and won on turn like 3 or 4. So that was really fun. Not for them, but for me. And then I was 2-1, and then I played against another interesting deck. I think it was like some sort of like fast, like red deck, and ended up beating them. It was a storm, I think. Yeah, some sort of Ruby Storm deck, and it's kind of like game one went pretty horrible, but then game two I kind of popped off on that one. Then after that, ended up making top eight, and then I played against the guy I actually lost to in the first round. I played against him again, and I actually beat him that time, uh, which I was not expecting that because he was a really good player, and I kind of felt bad because I've only gone to like 4 or 5 RCQs. Now, granted, I've topped like 4 or 5 of them, or topped 8, almost all of them, but this guy, he was like from out of town, I think. He drove like 4 hours there or something like that, so I felt kind of bad. But anyway, after that, I played against a Dimir frog deck, or frog tide deck, and that was a really good match, and I ended up beating him as well. And then I went on to the finals and got not completely, I would say. I just got beat by Boros Energy, and it was the only time I played against it there. And I was like, that was the one deck I was ready to play against, and I ended up losing still. And because that deck is so ridiculous. I could have won game one, honestly, because he was at like 1 life, and I think I made a couple misplays. But I definitely could have won game one. Game two, I lost for sure, but that's just how it goes. Lost 2-0, and that was it. So that's about it. And yeah.